Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wyoming Women's Business Center's 2019 webinar series. Today's presentation is Dealing with Difficult People in Today's Work Environment. My name is Christine Langley, and I'll be your moderator today. You're going to notice that on the right-hand side of your screen is a GoToWebinar control panel, and I just want to call quick attention to both the questions panel and the chat panel. If you have any questions or comments, you can use these panels to communicate with us during the presentation, and both myself and also Waldo Smith are on the line in order to monitor those during the presentation. So this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be available on our YouTube channel. So you can just go to youtube.com and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center if you'd like to see the replay. And make sure that you subscribe and check out our other webinars in our series as well. You can also visit our website at wyomingwomen.org or look for us on Facebook and Instagram. So immediately following this presentation, a survey is going to launch. And we ask you to complete this survey because it provides us, as well as our funding partners, with valuable feedback information. We read every single survey. And so then again, just as a reminder, all of the participants on the call today are muted just to minimize background noise. So once again, if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, you can type them in the chat box or the questions panel. So we're going to start out our presentation today, just going through this quick agenda. I'm going to cover a little bit about the Wyoming Women's Business Center if some of you are new to our webinar series, so you understand who we are. And then we'll jump right into our presentation with our speaker today, and then we'll finish up with a Q&A at the end. So the Wyoming Women's Business Center is a nonprofit organization that assists individuals who want to start or expand small businesses in the state of Wyoming. And we strive to advance financial self-sufficiency by promoting economic justice and equality throughout the state of Wyoming. So we primarily do this through three specific programs. The first is business training and counseling. The second is access to capital through our microloan program and our individual development accounts programs. And then lastly, we have a professional artist development center. And so if you'd like more information on any one of our individual programs, you can hop over to our website and it gives a great explanation on there of each individual program. But our webinar series is actually brought to you specifically by the microloan program or the microfinance department. And so I want to give you a little bit more information about microloans. We do offer microloans anywhere between $500 and $50,000 to help fund business startups or expansions, specifically in the state of Wyoming. And so if you have any questions about the microloan program or you're interested in that, we'd encourage you to get in contact with our microlending director, Waldo Smith. And his contact information is on the bottom of your screen. All right, so, well, without further ado, I want to introduce everybody to Mary. This is Mary Augustin. She's a human resources specialist and a program coordinator for the Wyoming Economic Development Association through Align. And she serves as a point of contact for all HR consulting and training in addition to her role with WEDA. So she brings extensive experience in human resources and organizational development. She holds the designation of Certified Professional for the Society of Human Resource Management. And she's currently serving on the board of directors for both the local and state chapters of the Human Resource Management Society. So she also serves in her community by volunteering her time as a board member for the Boys and Girls Club of Cheyenne. And in her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her husband, children, and grandchildren, and of course enjoys traveling like most of us. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Okay, so we are going to do a little switch over here in presenters. And Mary is going to pull up her screen. And then we will get going on talking about difficult people. And when Mary and I were chatting about this presentation last week, we were laughing about how we have a high attendance today. And we think it's because this topic aligns nicely with the holidays.
I totally agree.
Since we know that can be a struggle dealing with all different kinds of people, right?
It can. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christine. Let's get started, everybody. So
Mary,
today, I'm sorry,
Mary,
go ahead.
I think I'm seeing your presentation slides, and you may need to switch around like we did last week.
Okay, give me just a quick second here.
Mary has the coveted dual screen that everybody loves.
I
And
do.
so
Are you seeing it now, or is it the same one?
this, it looks like the correct one. You just need to get into presentation mode.
I'm so sorry. Give me just a second here. Are you seeing me click around now or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do the same thing I did the other day. I apologize. Hold on one second.
No problem.
All right. Did that work?
Yes, it looks beautiful.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. See what we can do here. Give me just one more second. And now you're not seeing my presentation, or you're seeing the main thing, right?
Yes, I'm seeing just
Excellent.
the main screen.
All right. So now let's get started. Sorry about that. So today we're going to talk about dealing with difficult people in today's work environment. And we're going to discuss some ways as management that we can handle some difficult employee situations. So the objectives for this talk are pretty simple. We're going to review a basic communication model. We will talk about how to define difficult and conflict. We'll talk about some ways that people can be difficult and how to deal with each type. We will discuss how these type of people and situations can affect your business. And then we're going to review an overall strategy for working with difficult people. So starting out with just an example of a basic communication model. The sender formulates a message, sends it over to the receiver, who then formulates a response back and sends it back to the original sender. It sounds pretty easy, but for some people, using this is not very easy. It's been found that poor or improper communication techniques can be a major concern in the workplace, and creating and maintaining effective workplace communications can help with a positive work environment. So let's talk about some things that make communication less than perfect. A difficult situation. So what defines a difficult person or a situation? When a person is difficult to deal with for whatever reason, it's not easy to deal with, and therefore it makes us uncomfortable. So difficult people or difficult situations can always bring conflict. The conflict may be with the other person, or it may be just inside our own heads. So remember that being difficult may just be a perception of yours. The person you really don't like to deal with may be really easy for someone else to handle. Not everybody's going to click with you. So next we have conflict. What is conflict? Conflict occurs when a disagreement about something specific begins to escalate or has escalated to a disagreement or even dislike about something. Conflict can arise when people have incompatible ideas or even personalities. And when someone has different ways of thinking and communicating and or disagrees about how to get things done, we can consider them difficult because it causes uncomfortable conflict for us to talk to them. So how are difficult people and conflict related to communication? People can definitely have different ways of getting their point across. Those communication skills can be being non-communicative, not being clear in your communication, or just basically using some poor communication techniques. For example, when Susie wants something and either doesn't ask, asks without being clear, or even demands it without using some good communication skills, a conflict can arise. Or when Sally wants something but can't express why it's important, she may be told no. And then she doesn't know how to re-ask or renegotiate in a way to get to that yes answer. So let's talk about some types of difficult people. And you're going to see as we go through these, some of these share some really similar characteristics. So first off, we have the cranky person. Why are people cranky? Some people have really learned it's just how to get their way. If they create an atmosphere that makes it difficult for people to get along with them, they can get their own way. As people know, it's really just easier just to agree with them than to try to argue with them. We have all had that coworker that's just too much work to communicate with, so we give in. For other people that are perceived as cranky, It may just be something that they're going through, some kind of a reflection of their own inner turmoil. There can be issues in their life they've not shared with you or that you're not aware of that make them cranky or grumpy. It can be their constant mood state or hopefully just a temporary one. So how do we handle those people that are cranky in our workplace? So first off, I always say look at your own behavior. Are you any part of the problem? Is there any kind of a history you might have with this person that might make them be cranky towards you? If so, maybe a different mode of communication, an email, a memo, or getting a go-between coworker may be better for now to communicate and get the work done. And what can you change about your own behavior? Did you interrupt them while they were working within a critical deadline? Make sure you examine all sides of the issue. And if they are irate or berating it all to you, don't remain silent. You can agree with parts of what they're saying, but don't let them walk all over you or be overbearing. And attempt to control the tone of the situation. Ask them to speak in a calmer or even a nicer tone, and tell them that you'll be back to discuss the issue when they're able to be civil or better to work with. Next, we have the aggressive person. These are the employees or coworkers that can put your entire team on edge and possibly even drive away business. They can be really intense in their work, driven by some deadlines, and lash out at anyone who doesn't understand their drive to succeed. They can believe in criticizing and not complimenting. They can manipulate other employees into doing what they want. They can exhibit some learned helplessness, such as saying, well, I've never been taught to do that. They can be revengeful or backstabbing to anyone who doesn't agree with them. And overly aggressive people expect the person to be intimidated enough just to run away from them, thus they get their own way. So how do you deal with an aggressive personality? Stand up to them, but try not to fight back. Make them treat you respectfully and professionally, just like you're doing with them. And you can also let them go and wait for their behavior to run its angry course. And I always think that maybe you should say their name and make sure that you're asserting your own opinions. You can say, John, I disagree, or John, that's not what we decided to do. And such employees can prove to be nightmares for their companies and create a toxic work environment. Their actions not only spread negativity at the workplace, but also can prompt some good employees to move to other jobs. So it's important for management to confront them with the facts and warn them to stop that kind of practice right away or be ready for some consequences. And remember, there's a difference between being assertive in your beliefs and being aggressive. It's okay for people to be assertive and strong in believing in what they're talking about. It's just not okay to cross that line where it causes discomfort or even fear in other people. So next we have the sneaky person or the sniper. They can be really hard to deal with, as sometimes you don't see it coming and you're caught off guard. They're really good at the subtle shots, like putting you down either alone or in front of others, and then they try to make it out like they were joking. They can also use sarcasm as a tool. It's a passive-aggressive communication skill meant to undermine the trust in a relationship and can even erode a relationships. The sniper can look at you sideways, like you don't know what you're talking about when you present an idea, or somehow be disapproving of the work you do and the way you do it. So how do you take down a subtle sniper? You call them out on their behavior. Making sure that you verbalize it lets them know that you're aware of what's going on and you don't like it. Their response can be to deny it, like, oh no, that's not what I meant. You are taking it out of context. Or say something like, can't you take a joke? And that just implies that you're being too sensitive, putting it on you. Sometimes speaking up and calling them out on it lessens the possibility of it ever happening again. And if you call them out on it in front of others, it also calls attention to what they are up to and makes some other employees aware of it, just in case they do it to them too. So next we have the complainer. And working with a chronic complainer can be very annoying and really exhausting. You know the type. It's the nothing pleases them, and they find fault in management's every word, suggesting that the people in charge are just not the smartest bulbs in the box. And even their coworkers can be that way too. They focus on what is wrong and not the solutions. There's nothing new in the workplace that escapes this person, and they are comfortable sharing their negative commentary with anyone who'll listen. They seem to thrive on the negative work talk and engage anyone who will listen to them, but don't minimize the potential damage they can do. They're like that slow drip from the leaky water pipe in the ceiling. The drops of water don't do much damage at first, but over time, they'll create a stain or even bring the whole ceiling down. The chronic complainer infects the workplace culture by spreading negativity and creating doubts in the mind of their team players. And for managers that are striving to implement a new policy or a new program, this behavior gets in the way of driving some positive change. So what do we do with a complainer? You can listen for the need. Some people turn into chronic complainers because they feel like they're not being heard. They're being constantly dismissed. And everyone accuses them of being negative all the time or even a pessimist. But they feel like they're only stating the truth and being real. And when they want to be listened, and they want to be listened to and to feel that what they're saying matters. So giving them someone to listen to may just be what they need. You can also reframe the situation. Sometimes negative people just need a bit of perspective adjustment. Remind them of the positives in the situation. And you can also validate. Many times the complainer can have great points to make. It's just the communication style they choose to use that's really not good. So you can also sympathize. Express sympathy as best you can and try to make it as authentic as possible. People can tell when sympathy is fake. And with complainers, that can lead to an, oh great, do you think I'm just whining attitude. It's also important that you avoid any kind of sarcasm with this. You might think their complaint is stupid or maybe even a little funny, but sarcasm will be noticed and it'll create even more problems. You can also redirect the conversation. Steer it towards something neutral, or something you know that they like. Essentially, you're changing the subject of the conversation without trying to make it obvious that you don't want to hear their problem for the millionth time. So then we have the bully. Workplace bullying can create a toxic work environment. Instead of the bully at school that hits your books out of your hands or picks on you on the playground, the workplace bully can show up in several other ways at the office. There's an organization called the Workplace Bullying Institute, and they found that a large percentage of adults said they'd been personally bullied at work, while many said they'd seen it happen to someone else. So why are workplace bullies allowed to get away with it? Because bullies are often high performers. They might be a top salesperson who brings in huge deals, or a brilliant engineer who's always coming up with efficient solutions, or a marketer who has managed to double your site's traffic. And whatever it is, they're bringing value to the company, which means the company has an incentive to keep them on board and happy. It can be a way of life for some companies, but that doesn't mean it is right. So how does a bully operate? They could make false accusations. They blame you for errors you didn't make. And sometimes that just takes away a focus on an error that they made. And their body language can be very loud, glaring, staring at you, making you feel threatened or ill at ease. They may even invade your personal body space. They can also be dismissive. Bullies often try to minimize contributions to a project or embarrass a coworker from sharing their ideas. They can say things like, oh, that's silly, thus dismissing that person's work and their input. There's also ostracism. It's a common tactic of bullies. A bully can use a silent treatment to try to cut their coworkers from the group. They'll ask everyone else out to lunch, but leave you out. They'll ask every other coworker for input on a project, but not ask you. So how do you handle a bully? We recommend speaking up early on. The good news is you have a window of opportunity to nip things in the bud before you become the long-term target of a workplace bully. There are a few ways to do that, including using some of these statements. You can remind them of their own values. Say, I know that you really care about everyone feeling valued, but when you do whatever it is they're doing, it undermines that intention. Let's try it this way in the future. Or you could explain why their behavior is a problem. Say, I notice you do this, and when you do that, it makes it hard for us to foster a team environment. And again, we recommend saying their name a lot. Say, Jim, I hear what you're saying, but Jim, I need you to stop doing that. Or I treat you with respect, Jim, and I need you to do the same. And don't forget your own body language. Make it one of strength. Stand up tall, shoulders back, use eye contact. It shows you're not intimidated and you mean what you say. The bad news is if you try to ignore bullying early on and let it continue, it's going to most likely get worse. A lot of times people let it go and let it go and let it go. And by the time they realize that the bullying is continuing, it might be too late. Once that power imbalance has been cemented, it can be really hard to fix. So don't let them get and keep the upper hand. Next, document the abuse. If it took you a while to realize what was happening and you feel like you've missed your chance to react quickly, start documenting. Keep notes of who, what, when, where, the why of things that happened. And if bullying occurs, write down who else was the witness, what was said, why you think it was said, and try just to put as much detail as possible around the facts of the situation. If you decide to report the bully later, you'll want to be able to give some concrete examples of the behavior you're describing, especially if it can show a pattern. In the world of human resources, there is a phrase, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And documenting issues makes it so much easier to prove a problem and get help. Next, take care of yourself outside of work. Bullying can take a huge toll on you in the office and outside of it, but can also help to try to balance the damaging influences with some positive ones. Do some things outside of work that would make you feel good about yourself and that you enjoy. Spend some time with your family, your friends, and lean on them for support. Next, do your research. Does your company have a policy about bullying, mistreatment, verbal abuse, or anything similar that you might be able to use? Most organizations have an employee handbook or some other document that lays out the organization's values and their expectations. It can only strengthen your case if you're able to point to that language if you decide to make a complaint. Next, seek help from management. If you've made attempts to deal with the situation on your own and haven't gotten anywhere, speak to your manager or your HR department. A lot of companies have a chain of command on grievances. You can go to them and talk about, here's what's going on. I've tried all these things, none of them have worked, and that's why I'm here in your office. Show them you've already tried to handle it prior to coming to them. And think about how you can make a business case rather than a personal plea, no matter what you decide to do. Sometimes you can calculate the cost of the bully to the company in terms of turnover, absenteeism, lost productivity, and some others. Your documentation can also help at this age because you're going to be able to cite specific examples of how this wasted your time and how resources were lost. And last, you can always look for a new job. The reality is that many bullying situations end in the person that's being bullied leaving their job because they got fed up and they just quit. So it's in your best interest to start job searching as soon as you can, especially if your company doesn't have a policy or a culture that you can trust to squash bullying swiftly and forcefully. It could help to have a job offer or at least some prospects lined up, just in case things go bad. So, and another area to consider, what effect are these types of people having on our organization or on our business? A work environment whose team has some bad players on it can be affected by all of these factors. decreases in productivity and performance. Some employees are so distracted by others' behaviors or can even be a participant in them, which causes a lack of focus on their work. There's also employee commitment. It's really hard to work in an environment where bad behaviors are tolerated, thus lessening your employee commitment. There's turnover costs. New employees cost an awful lot of money to train and get up to speed. You don't want to lose a good employee and keep a negative or a difficult one. Then we have use of sick leave. A negative work environment can cause many stress-related illnesses or just people not wanting to come to work, so they take some mental health days. And finally, hopefully you won't have this, but legal expenses. No employer wants to get to that point, so management should handle bad behaviors as quickly as they can. Some of these behaviors can cross over into causing a hostile work environment. And if that can be proven in court, it can be detrimental to your company's finances and your reputation. And also be aware that these behaviors can spread like a virus. It starts with one person, but others see the behaviors tolerated, so they think it's okay. Thus, it can become a group behavior. And over time, the people who work around disruptive individuals may begin to behave differently and to believe that the organization has a high tolerance for such misbehaviors. And in today's world, we have social media, which adds a whole new layer of concern. Employees may bully or be uncivil to one another on social networking sites. In addition, some postings that may portray the employer in a negative light can go viral, damaging an employer's reputation and their brand. Once an employer finds out about such interactions, they need to act, even though it may or may not have occurred on work time or property. I used to be part of an organization where an employee would post negative comments on their social media posts, definitely snipey ones. He would post them on his personal one and even on the company's Facebook page. His personal page also identified him as an employee of our company, so people knew where he worked, which made it even worse. So he got called in and spoken to about the inappropriateness of these posts and how his comments didn't live up to our employees' code of conduct, which he signed. And after that discussion, the employee's negative comments on his personal page and on our Facebook page stopped. And to be certain, the impact of social media on today's workplace could be a presentation all on its own. So now that we've gone over some types of difficult people and ways to handle those specific types, let's review some basic steps of dealing with difficult people. These can include prevent them from becoming difficult, stop the behavior, don't let it escalate, make sure you define the problem, and determine some ideal outcomes. I often find that difficult people are people who just want attention. So if we give people attention, maybe we can keep them from becoming difficult. Emotional intelligence or some people skills can include knowing and understanding the people that we work with. This can require spending some non-work time with them. Not necessarily out of the office, but some team building activities or team projects separate from the normal work duties. You can also have conversations over lunch in the break room or get together during some all-office gatherings. All of these are ways for us to learn more about each other's preferences. And employers might consider a profile instrument of some sort. They have MBTI or DISC assessments. Those are some personality evaluators that can be used to help determine work and behavioral styles. In addition to wanting attention, sometimes people seem difficult to us because they haven't been taught problem-solving skills in the workplace. First of all, make sure your work culture encourages employees at all levels to work out possible solutions in their job and to seek out help if needed. You should give them the tools and the training that they need to make changes in their work without having to ask for approval all the time. We all want to be able to have some power in our jobs. But prevention won't always work. When you know you're going to have to handle a difficult person or a situation, just thinking about it can cause you some anxiety, some stress, or even anger. Try to enter the encounter without those emotions and stay calm and level. But sometimes that doesn't work, and you must hit the pause button before you hit the encounter. And sometimes a conversation can start okay and then get heated. Either way, if you find emotions on either side are escalating, take the time beforehand to calm down, or if it escalates during the conversation, be wise enough to step back and ask to meet later when things are a little bit cooler. If it's an email exchange you're having, try not to answer immediately. Wait to respond until you've had time to think about it, and then either respond with a calmer email or call them and arrange a face-to-face meeting. We all know it's easy to misconstrue tones and meanings in a text or an email message. And here's another key element. Let's make sure we know what the issue is. Sometimes if the actual issue is not understood or a person is just reacting to it, it makes everything worse. Again, you should try to take the emotions out of the conversation and use some effective communication skills. A great skill in communication is active listening. We all try to follow these, but sometimes it works better than others. You don't need to get a certificate in how to deal with difficult people. Sometimes you just need to go back to some basic interpersonal communication skills, something that we are prone to forget as our lives move forward and we get busy and our brains get full. So look at that first bullet. It's where most of the stumbling occurs. We are so busy playing dialogue in our own heads that we really don't hear what's being said to us. Something like, oh no, there's the complainer again. I wonder what she's found to be unhappy about today. Or you could hear the beginning of what they're saying to us and then begin to formulate the response before you hear the whole story. I know I'm really guilty of that. If you can conquer just listening for some comprehension and keeping your focus on their words, it can really change your interpersonal interactions. And try not to make assumptions. If we have a history with that person that we're talking with, and there's been a pattern of prior behavior, it's more than a little tempting to assume that we know where the conversation's going. And again, particularly with the complainer, the people that are typically negative, we can start rolling our eyes the second we hear their voice. We think, I know where this is going. I'm going to suggest some solutions. He's going to have a half a dozen reasons why each one won't work. And again, as with active listening, we do much better with people that we've previously experienced as difficult if we don't let those assumptions enter our minds. You should also minimize distractions. When you anticipate a difficult encounter, it's really tempting to keep the computer monitor between you, not turn off the ringer on the phone, or not even close the office door. Things will go much better if you give the person your full attention. And then you should also ask questions. Make sure that you clarify the issue and get the full story. You can even ask about alternatives and encouraging them to come up with their own solutions to their problems. Just by asking some questions, you may be able to give them some things they hadn't thought about. And finally, let's discuss creating an environment where motivated employees are encouraged and given the freedom to do their best work. It really starts with hiring the right people and continues with creating a culture of accountability for negative behaviors, including identifying and remedying problems. So here are some steps for changing the culture around bad behaviors in your workplace. First, set some clear expectations for workplace employment or performance and engagement. Sometimes those bad behaviors emerge in environments where standards and expectations aren't clearly defined and where accountability is not enforced. If your organization has clear values, make those a central part of your team's or your department's culture. If the values aren't clear, work with each team member to establish the values that they believe are important to have a healthy working environment. We recommend holding team building sessions to come up with the mission, vision, and value statements for their organization or their department. If your employees all have a voice in the creation of it, it makes it much easier for them to work within. You should also teach your team players to voice their concerns. Hold people accountable for proposing and following through on actions to fix things. Establish that it's inappropriate to complain about issues or other people or talk behind the scenes. And managers need to engage and observe team members. A really good manager focuses on both engaging with their team members and observing their behaviors. It's really hard to coach or offer constructive feedback without a history that comes from observing your team members and engaging them. Bad players survive and thrive in environments where the manager is kind of operating at a distance, but they really struggle to succeed when the manager is closely involved with each team member. You can also ask your team members about the temperature of their work environment. Sometimes those bad team players are really good at remaining just below ground and out of earshot of the manager. However, a manager who engages with all of their team members is able to focus on those individuals and those behaviors that can bring down morale and performance. Offer timely and clear feedback and coaching. Once issues are discovered, you must engage quickly and constructively with each individual. Putting it in a performance evaluation months later aren't going to fix these issues. And managers can coach employees by talking to them about how constant bad behavior erodes the working environment, and it can show how their behavior affects their own and others' performance and morale. If needed, you can talk to them about how their behavior affects their career in a bad way, and then you can focus on some positive ways to act in the work and setting. You can also recognize when it's time to take some escalating actions. If behaviors don't change, it's time to move from coaching to counseling. Coaching can help with presenting a positive change in behavior by offering some guidance, encouragement, and some specific action steps for them to take. And counseling is when clear feedback is provided to the employee that their behaviors are unacceptable, and make sure that they know the actions that will be taken if they fail to change their behavior. Performance improvement plans can clearly define outcomes if the employee fails to improve, and you should always keep track of the progress in this process. And finally, you should take final action if needed and remove the negative energy. You owe it to your team, your organization, and yourself to get toxic people out of the workplace. And while these bad team players may seem harmless on the surface, if unrepaired, the damage can become really bad in the long run. All right, so thank you so much for your time today, and I'm open for questions or comments. Christine?
Okay, terrific. So I'm just going to switch the presentation back to myself. And we'll move ahead to our questions screen. And so while people are coming up with questions or comments about today's presentation, I'm just going to cover really quickly about our funding partners at the Wyoming Women's Business Center. So this is all made possible through our funding agencies like the Small Business Administration and the Wyoming Business Council, along with the Wyoming Women's Foundation and AARP Foundation. So of course we are thankful for their support and their guidance as partners. And this is contact information for the Wyoming Women's Business Center. So if anybody wants to get in touch with myself, Waldo, or our other business counselors, our contact information is on the screen. And then I know Waldo is helping us today monitor some questions. Waldo, is anything coming in? I know we covered a lot of ground today. It's possible that, as usual, we are incredibly thorough.
Hey, don't see any pending questions at this time.
All right, terrific. Okay, so as we close out the webinar today, I'd ask that everybody stay tuned for a little bit longer and complete this, quick. It'll take you less than 3 minutes to complete this survey. And thank you everyone for attending, and happy holidays. And thanks again, Mary, for your time. Oh, did we get one?
We do have a question. Says, can you give some advice about how to deal with a power differential when you have tried to address problems with the person and clearly those in authority have taken sides?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that last part of the question?
Yes. Can you give some advice about how to deal with a power differential when you have tried to address problems with the person and clearly those in authority have taken sides?
Oh, those are really hard situations. As a general rule, you like to think that your management will assist you. You really like to think that they are above board and they don't choose sides, but sometimes, unfortunately, that does happen. And in those situations, there are mediators within Wyoming that you can deal with. The Department of Agriculture has mediators that can assist with that. You may just have to go to some kind of an outside source to get assistance with that. If you don't have a human resources personnel within your area, which is always very helpful, because a human resources person is trained to be that basic mediator, to really not take sides and to just try to do what's best for the person and for the company. But if you don't have that available to you, there are organizations such as myself, Align. We do provide some assistance with those organizations. And I would just, if you don't have those available to you, I keep trying to have that conversation and say, you know, I don't feel like you're seeing my side of this, and try to really document some more of examples of that. Take the feelings out of it, but really document the exact things that are occurring that make you feel like your side is not being listened to.
Thanks, Mary. I know that's a tough situation, especially in small organizations.
It is.
You know, often management will have relationships, you know, personal friendships with different employees, and that can sometimes cloud their judgment when it comes to, you know, assessing a communication problem or issue within the workplace.
It can. Thank you, Christine.
All right, everybody. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, but again, if anyone wants to have a one-on-one conversation, Mary, of course, you know, works with Align, and I'm sure would be happy to communicate with any of you on this topic. And then you can always reach out to a business counselor at the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and we can either discuss it with you directly or reach out and find some resources that can help you. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Thanks again, Mary, for your time and for your valuable presentation. And again, this is recorded and available on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to rewind and listen to certain sections of this again. So complete the survey at the close of this webinar, and thanks again, everybody, for attending. Happy holidays.